The following trailer is rated H for honest. From the developer that gave you some of history's most iconic game series, then threw it all away to make pachinko machines, health clubs, and, soccer games, comes the franchise that taught a generation of gamers there's nothing more delicious than sweet, sweet wall meat. Castlevania. Discover a gaming franchise older than most of its fans, with 30 years of history and a mind-blowing 41 titles that almost all take place in the same castle with the same antagonist, where you'll fight through hundreds of skeletons, demons, monsters, and maids, all for the privilege of killing everyone's favorite vampire, Dracula, until he resurrects again in like 10 minutes. In an experience that stayed incredibly fresh for being kind of the same game every time. Turns out everyone loves Metroid from all goths. Experience the eternal grudge match that is everyone versus Dracula, as you inhabit the many colorful protagonists of Castlevania, from the tiny shorts-wearing vampire slayers of the Belmont family, to Dracula's son, Alucard, who's mainly in it to work out his daddy issues, the J-pop protagonist that just sort of appears one day, that one sword lady, because every Japanese game series needs a sword lady, and who could forget Axe Armor. Then take on Castlevania's grab bag of famous monsters, pulled from anything the developers could get their hands on, featuring werewolves, mummies, Frankensteins, and 1 million Medusa heads, until you finally get to Dracula, an anime badass so ridiculously strong that death is literally his sidekick, in the world's most extensive storyline about Dracula that didn't develop him as a character at all, despite having 3 decades to do it, but still has 2 major advantages over all other vampire fiction: incredibly good music and lots of candle whipping. Yeah! Plumb the ever-shifting depths of Dracula's castle as it evolved from 2D platformer to 2D action RPG, then did it all over again in the 3rd dimension, and tried on more new and wacky game systems than Final Fantasy, but maintained its core of monster slaying, powerful sub-weapons, complicated labyrinths, constant backtracking, screen-filling bosses, and as much property damage as possible, because nothing pisses off the Lord of the Undead like breaking all his fancy chinas.
Oh, you jackass, those were a gift!
Marvel at the massive catalog of Castlevania games featuring the painfully tough originals, including the sequel that was intentionally obtuse to sell you copies of Nintendo Power, the Super Nintendo version that had Mode 7 and wasn't afraid to use it, the early 90s ones you probably emulated, you filthy pirates, the extremely off-brand Kid Dracula, the 3D games for the N64 that haunt my nightmares to this day, the groundbreaking PS1 game that created a genre, and the pile of handheld pseudo-sequels that tried to recapture the magic of Symphony, the PS2 and Xbox versions that you're better off forgetting, that one Wii-exclusive fighting game where everyone was either a Lolita cosplayer or a stripper, and the modern games that play like God of War where the story finally went full anime. Then marvel at the sorry state of the franchise with the latest iteration of the series, the Castlevania Pachinko game, as Konami finally does what the Belmonts never could, and murders Dracula, only to have his spirit carried on through 1 million indie games on Steam. Have you tried Dead Cells? It's like they mixed Metroidvania with pure uncut cocaine. So whip it good, and obsessively fill out every corner of that map with a classic gaming series that, despite some missteps, is mostly still pretty awesome, but sadly may never return. Unless Bloodstained bucks the Kickstarter trend and doesn't suck, but I won't hold my breath. At least it'll give Koji Igarashi an excuse to keep dressing like vampire Indiana Jones for a little longer. Starring Short Shorts the Barbarian, Goth Ryu, Vampire Hunter D, Gene Vest Dolph Lundgren, Talbane, another white-haired guy with a fancy coat, a short white-haired guy with a fancy coat. Honestly, these dudes look really alike. Tango and Cash, Swords McGee, Grim Fandango, and Bram Stoker's Beaten Horse. Gothic Metroid. Doesn't everyone know that Kid Dracula is clearly the real monster? You poor helpless fools. You voted from 24 of the greatest franchises. Now the people have spoken, and it's down to these final 4 survivors: Mega Man, Danganronpa, Infamous, and Spyro. Vote on Facebook and Twitter with the hashtag HGTVote for the title you think should take HGT Gauntlet Greatness. May the best game win. Comment below on what you want me to read in my epic voice. Something I'm giving up on you. Enemy aircraft detected. Move to engage. You know what they say. The more the merrier. That penis cake is too realistic. I'm sorry for making fun of Crash Bandicoot.